Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's your favorite apostate and undude two here once again after a busy day of apostatizing. And as an apostate, of course, I have been engaging in the following activities to the most profuse degree imaginable. I have been fornicating, of course, multiple women at the same time. Oh my! I have been manslaying, so if you have seen some murders in your local neighborhood? Well, this apostate is clearly to blame. The Bible says so. I have been greedy. I lust after money. I have been extorting. Actually, I have set up my own protection racket. I am now part of the mob. Hey, what's the going? What's the mob? Yeah. And also, I have been idolatrating and functioning as an idolater. I have myself just this morning constructed a golden calf for the sons of Israel to bow down to and worship. Incidentally, God didn't punish me for that one. Strange. I'm sure he knows what he's doing. But anyway, why I decide to approach you fine, outstanding ladies and gentlemen this evening is to discuss the topic of Jehovah's Witnesses' minds. And to really impress upon you the nature of how they think and how to approach the Jehovah's Witnesses. So first of all, let me make it clear. Jehovah's Witnesses' minds do not function in a normal capacity. And this is just my collection of thoughts and opinions and theories surrounding why Jehovah's Witnesses function the way they do. So please take it for no more than what it is, simply my opinion on the subject. But that being said, what I believe Jehovah's Witnesses suffer from is a voluntary alteration of reality. What brought this on is a discussion that I was having with several of the apostate buddies. And they were expressing to me their frustration, their indignation, and their exasperation at talking with Jehovah's Witnesses. As rightly they should, because talking with Jehovah's Witnesses is an innately frustrating activity to engage in. So, if you have a weak constitution or heart palpitations, don't do it. But anyway. They were telling me about how Jehovah's Witnesses were ignoring the argument and how they couldn't acknowledge the positions that they were taking. Now, what I began to think about was my own experience as a Jehovah's Witness online. And what I came to realize is that I wasn't ever ignoring the arguments at all, nor was I trying to defend my inane position. Well, I was, but not by acknowledging these arguments and trying to come up with a counter-argument. I should preface that. So, how did I do it then? What was going on in my mind at the time? Well, I came to the realization that I didn't recognize the arguments at all. It's as if the points brought up by apostates didn't exist. And I submit to you, the audience, that the moment Jehovah's Witnesses begin having to actively, consciously ignore your arguments and provide counter-arguments, that is the moment that they cease becoming witnesses and begin their track into apostasy. Because for a Jehovah's Witness to function in the real world, they have to pretend as though the real world does not exist. Because there is no rational or logical counter-argument to their claims that they make as Jehovah's Witness. So they set up voluntary psychological barriers in their mind in order to prevent them from accessing the reality that surrounds their existence. So Jehovah's Witnesses don't know what you're talking about at all. It's not because they're stupid. It's because they have an altered consciousness. It's because they experience an entirely different, sensational experience than you do. The tactile feelings of being a Jehovah's Witness, the semantics that they engage in, they're all finely tuned to create a coherent, solipsic, myopic universe for them to function in. The entirety of the world of Jehovah's Witnesses is solely comprised of Jehovah's Witnesses and Jehovah's Witness-approved activities. That is why Jehovah's Witnesses can't ever truly be themselves, because they are not an individual any longer, but rather they guard the thoughts of the collective. They are experiencing an alternate reality. That is why Jehovah's Witnesses, when they go on a hiking trip out in the park, they can't merely enjoy the sight of nature around them and experience God in the quiet of the breeze and in the sun shining through the leaves. Rather, they have to focus on the promise of a new world to come. Even if that world is exactly the same as the world that they're experiencing, they have to state out loud and in their minds, subconsciously, "Well, I can't wait until this entire world is a paradise earth. Won't that just be wonderful?" They can't ever truly enjoy a movie because they're having to police their mind. They're having to guard it against what they're seeing. Jehovah's Witnesses are Jehovah's Witnesses because Jehovah's Witness is an altered state of consciousness in and of itself. I suspect, although I have no empirical evidence to support this claim, I suspect that if one were to do a study surrounding the minds of Jehovah's Witnesses and really examine the brain and the neurological functions, one would discover that their minds operate in a holistically alternative fashion. I really can't emphasize that enough. So, as apostates, our goal is to broaden, enlighten, and expand the mind of Jehovah's Witnesses. We already know that they have voluntarily enclosed themselves in this small cage of preconceived notions, and they don't wander outside that cage. Well, the best way to get to a Jehovah's Witness is by acting like a Jehovah's Witness. Let me explain. How we form memories and how we recall and recollect experiences is through positive and negative feedback loops in our brain. It has to do with synaptic plasticity. Plasticity. There we go. Synaptic plasticity. All right? And so it is much easier, studies have shown, to form new ideas and concepts when we relate them to already existing ideas and concepts. Because when you form a synaptic connection, a neurological pathway, it becomes more entrenched the more often you access that pathway. And so through associative memory, you can form new concepts, expand your mind, and remember things much easier by associating new ideas, memories, emotions and desires with already existing and entrenched ones. That's how people remember grocery lists, for instance. They associate already existing concepts with far more entrenched concepts. Some people, they tell a mental story, and this is how they remember items. Kid you not. They construct a house, and they populate this house with items with which they're familiar with, and they tell a story. So you open the door. The door represents tomatoes. After you open the door, you take off your shoes, which represents milk. And you sit on the couch, which represents potato chips. And you watch the television, which represents lettuce, and so on and so forth. So you already know that you need tomatoes, you need potato chips, you need milk, and you need lettuce. And this is how people form memories. This is how they form new memories in order for them to go about their day, for them to function at a more efficient level. And so to access the minds of Jehovah's Witnesses, you have to use terms, vernacular, sentence structure, thought progression, and I already said terms, but once again, terminology that they will connect with. And it is quite difficult, I will admit. And it is effective to shock Jehovah's Witnesses into a state of new consciousness. But it has all the subtlety of immersing yourself in an ice water bath. Now, it is much not more proficient. What's the word I'm searching for? It's nicer, more considerate if you patiently, slowly wake the Jehovah's Witness up rather than simply immersing them in the ice water and throwing them into a reality with which they literally have no comprehension. And I say with no degree of uncertainty myself, it's difficult to recollect precisely how I arrived at conclusions while I was a Jehovah's Witness. I do remember the conclusions that I came to, but I have no idea how I got there. For the most part, it really is like walking through a fog in a mist in a dream. Because that is how foreign at this point the thought process of Jehovah's Witnesses is. So it will take quite a bit of effort on your part to connect with the Jehovah's Witness, but you must remember that the normal way, the idea of argument and counter-argument, does not connect with them, because again, they simply do not recognize the existence of your argument. They are not there to evaluate their teachings, or even to get you to evaluate theirs. They are simply in their own little world. It's a totally different line of thought than you could ever possibly imagine. And so if you're an outsider to Jehovah's Witnesses and you wonder exactly how they function, listen to me carefully. As an ex-Jehovah's Witness, I can tell you it is a kooky, very scary existence to think like a Jehovah's Witness. You have no comprehension of what's going on. So in order to get to a Jehovah's Witness, you have to act like a Jehovah's Witness. Use terms and scriptures and arguments that they're familiar with. Terms like the faithful and discreet slave. This will do a simultaneous overload for their brain. They know they're arguing with an apostate. This is going to create negative feedback loops, which is actually deconstructing and forming negative pathways in their mind. At the same time, since you are using terms that they're familiar with, it is overriding the programming of Jehovah's Witnesses using positive feedback loops that they're already familiar with, thusly allowing them to construct new ideas, expand their mind. I mean, it really is a twofold process. On the one hand, you are tearing down the barriers that they have voluntarily erected, and on the other hand, you are expanding their thought process by associating new terms and new concepts with already existing Jehovah's Witness terminology and Jehovah's Witness methodology. And eventually, born from this chaotic reprogramming, will be an individual, will be a person who is capable of independent thought, who is capable of forming their own ideas and their own opinions, and really that's the ultimate goal. I don't think that there are many of us apostates who profess we wish all Jehovah's Witnesses to think like us. Rather, we merely wish Jehovah's Witnesses to think for themselves. It is a very moral, righteous, freedom-oriented endeavor, because we wish to see no individual a slave, even if it's a slave to themselves in their mind. I invite you to think about individuals who've experienced traumatic incidents in their lives. And some of these people have actually erected voluntary psychological barriers that prevent them from accessing these memories. They're too painful. They might acknowledge the existence or the possibility of a painful incident in their lives, but they don't connect to it in the same way that a person who has a full memory of the event, in the same way that they do. So Jehovah's Witnesses, the second that they begin to acknowledge the existence of an alternative argument and begin defending the organization rather than regurgitating it, that is the moment that they become apostates. That is the moment that it's all downhill. So if you can get them there to the threshold, you've done their job. You've done your job, and their mind will do the rest. On that note, remember that life is a state of mind, which has quite a lot to do with what we just talked about. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you've connected with it on some level or another. I know it was an incoherent rant on my part. It's just something that I've been toying around with for quite a while. But anyway, I will see you in the coming days. Adios.